If you're looking for the best B660 motherboard, this video will help you find the right one for you. We've categorized the top Intel B660 motherboards to the best budget, best high-end, and our top choice, B660 of all things considered. To pick the best motherboards, we rated them according to VRM Design, aesthetics, connectivity, and value for money. So let's start. Price information and all motherboards mentioned in the video are available in the description. Number 3, MSI Meg B660 Mortar Wi-Fi, best budget B660 motherboard. The MSI Meg B660M Mortar is arguably the best B660 motherboard out there in terms of overall value. It's like a smaller brother to the B660 Tomahawk. While it does cut some corners here and there, this is still a great motherboard that will be quite good for most gamers. Of course, this is a micro ATX motherboard, so there will be some compromises here and there. However, if you can get by with just 2 M2 slots, don't need multiple fan headers, and need something more compact, then this is the board to get. The cherry on top is that you save a lot of money in the process. While the B660M Mortar is affordable, that does not mean it looks cheap. The Mortar series has always had an interesting design language, and the same is true for the B660 version. Thanks to the metallic silver finish on the heatsinks, the motherboard gives off a minimalist and industrial look. This is a board that can fit well into an all-white theme. All of the heatsinks complement each other beautifully, and even the rear panel cover goes along with theme. Branding is minimal, with just an MSI logo on the rear cover and Mortar branding on the chipset heatsink. As for storage, this micro ATX motherboard is equipped with 2 M2 slots and 6 SATA ports. It would have been nice to see another M2 slot here, but the form factor did not allow for that. Apart from that, there are 4 fan headers, which is a considerably lower number compared to other high-end ATX B660 motherboards. Still, that might not be a big issue if you already have a fan controller. Apart from that, there are no real compromises with this motherboard. You're getting a robust 14-phase VRM configuration, and 12 of those phases are dedicated to the V-core. It's good to see that nearly all B60 motherboards are decent in terms of power delivery, and this one lives up to the standard. Motherboard overclocking is also quite good compared to other micro ATX motherboards. It can handle 128 gigs of DDR4 memory with a maximum speed of up to 4800 MHz. Even though Intel processors work fine enough with lower frequency memory compared to Ryzen, this sort of performance is nice to see on a micro ATX board. Finally, this motherboard is not lacking in terms of connectivity either. You're getting 2.5 gigabit per second Ethernet, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.2, and plenty of USB ports. Overall, the B660M Mortar compares well against the competition. The Asus Prime B660MA is a close competitor, but the Mortar has a better build quality. In fact, it comes close to the quality of the B660 Tomahawk. The only difference is that this one is micro ATX. Either way, it's hands down the best budget B660 motherboard. Our rating for VRM Design is 8 out of 10. Aesthetics, 8 out of 10. Connectivity, 8 out of 10. Value for money, 8 out of 10 for an overall rating of 8 out of 10. Number 2, Gigabyte B660 Aorus Master, best high-end B660 motherboard. For the best high-end B660 motherboard, we've got the Gigabyte B660 Aorus Master. This is a powerful and flashy board catered towards enthusiasts. If you need a full-featured motherboard and don't mind spending a lot on it, this is the best B660 motherboard for you. One thing that immediately sets the B660 Aorus Master apart is the fact that it looks and performs like a Z790 motherboard. Of course, it doesn't support overclocking, but it has everything else you might want out of a gaming motherboard. The overall design is interesting, as the gray heatsinks contrast quite a bit with the black rear panel cover. This already flashy design is further complemented by the RGB lighting around the rear I/O cover and near the right edge of the motherboard. The large VRM heatsink features Aorus branding that is backlit by RGB LEDs. As for the chipset, M2, and VRM heatsinks, they are all gray with a grooved design. The chipset heatsink features the Aorus Eagle logo. Moving on, this motherboard features a 16+1+1 VRM configuration with 16 dedicated phases, or the V-core. These VRMs are rated at 60 amp, and this entire configuration is quite overkill for a B660 motherboard. It feels like it was designed with a 13900K in mind, even though it does not support overclocking as we mentioned. Memory support is impressive as well, as you can overclock supported DDR4 kits up to 5333 MHz. Sure, that won't be practical with most DDR4 kits, but it is possible. Moving on, this motherboard features 3 PCIe 4.0 M2 slots, allowing you to get the absolute best for your storage needs. One odd perk is the fact that it only has 4 SATA ports. Most people will be fine with this, but we're unsure why that is the case here. 6 SATA ports are standard on nearly every ATX board. Since the Aorus Master is catered towards people looking for a high-end option, it features a 4 LED debug panel, BIOS flashback, and a flagship audio codec. Speaking of audio, this motherboard delivers quite well in that regard, just like its bigger brother, the Z690 Aorus Master. Finally, this motherboard also excels in connectivity. It features plenty of USB ports, Wi-Fi 6, 2.5 gigabit per second Ethernet, and plenty of fan headers. The latter means that it's also great for water cooling, since you get a lot of flexibility for attaching pumps. Overall, the B660 Aorus Master is perfect if you're looking for high-end features but don't care about overclocking. As for the competition, the ROG Strix B660A comes close, but that board is even more pricey and hard to find these days. Our rating for VRM Design is 9 out of 10. Aesthetics, 8.5 out of 10. Connectivity, 9 out of 10. Value for money, 8 out of 10. For an overall rating of 8.5 out of 10. Number 1, MSI Meg B660 Tomahawk Wi-Fi DDR4, our top choice. MSI's Tomahawk series of motherboards have been largely successful thanks to their abundance of features, excellent power delivery, and sleek design. The B660 Tomahawk is no different, and that's why it was an easy choice for our pick as the best B660 motherboard all around. So what set this motherboard apart from all of the other B660 motherboards in the market? To start, in a world where every motherboard manufacturer wants to stand out with a flashy design, the Tomahawk takes a stealthy approach. This has become a standard for the series, and it continues to work well in their favor. The Tomahawk is sleek and stylish, allowing it to fit into almost any build thanks to its neutral design. It features a large rear panel cover with minimal branding and gigantic VRM heatsinks that blend right into the design. The chipset heatsink has subtle Tomahawk branding over it, and this heatsink design carries over to the M2 slots as well. Speaking of which, this board features 3 M2 slots, all of which are on the front of the motherboard. One sits above the PCIe x16 slot, and the other 2 are below the chipset heatsink. All of them feature MSI's EZ-M2 clips, which allow you to install M2 drives without fumbling with screws. The B660 Tomahawk comes with 7 4-pin fan pump headers, which is an insane amount for a B660 motherboard. This isn't something you'd expect even from an entry-level Z690 motherboard, so it's quite the welcome feature here. Let's talk about performance. Even though Intel's B-series boards don't support overclocking, the Tomahawk goes a bit overkill with its power delivery. It features a robust 12+1+1 phase VRM configuration, which can easily handle higher-end Alder Lake and Raptor Lake processors. This is excellent if you want to pair this motherboard with an i7-13700 or i9-13900. Of course, you can still use the K-series chips if you want, but there's no real point since you can't overclock anyway. However, memory overclocking is quite good here, as you can easily crank supported DDR4 kits up to 4800 MHz. It supports 128 GB of DDR4 memory, and there's also a DDR5 version. You might be wondering why we'd recommend the DDR4 version over the DDR5 one. It simply comes down to value. A lot of PC games are not optimized well to handle DDR5 memory, so the differences are minimal. On top of that, both DDR5 memory and DDR5 boards are quite expensive right now. All in all, the B660 Tomahawk is an excellent choice. It's reasonably priced, looks great, and delivers in terms of performance. Our rating for VRM Design is 9 out of 10. Aesthetics, 9 out of 10. Connectivity, 9 out of 10. Value for money, 8 out of 10. For an overall rating of 9 out of 10. So what do you think? Which of these is the best B660 motherboard for you? Or do you think another motherboard's better for your PC build?